Finally, let's do this for real. Sorry it took so long. You know what these legal types are like? Yes, sir. No, sir. Here's 80 pages of needless jargon, sir. Anyway, believe it or not, this is my excited face. Come on, come on. Let me show you what we've got. So, all the usual stuff. Merchandising, likeness, blah, blah, blah. But the really juicy stuff is their expectation of you. They need you to challenge yourself all season, be the best you can be, dominate your teammate, become a legend. All that jazz. Now, it's over to you.
The long wait is over. This is it, a brand new season. And before the show gets well and truly underway, we've got the all-important matter of a free practice session. It's great to be back. It's so exciting to be here at a new season. Plenty for the drivers to get their heads around. What will be going through their minds right now?
The faster you can work around the circuit conditions and get the car tailored to your liking, the better. And then you can just focus on the job in hand in terms of lap times. But first of all, you've got to get the car feeling right.
Okay, mate, this is the first running of the real car. Now, I know it's a big ask, but let's get some useful data and get you used to how the practice sessions work. Let's start the season as we mean to go on, eh? I know we can have a great year, so let's go. Okay, we need a few solid laps here to help us calculate a good race strategy. Okay, test complete, and that was a really good job indeed. We got a lot of valuable information out of that. Well done. Okay, we can take you this lap.
What an incredible practice session that was. But the fun doesn't
Okay, this is a quali sim. We've estimated the times our closest rivals will be doing, so that's what we need to beat. Programme complete and a job well done. We got some excellent data with that run, so come on back to the garage and I can take you through the numbers. Understood. Stopping this lap.
And if today's practice is anything to go by, we're in for an exceptional weekend of Formula One.
Okay, I hope you brought something good to read today. There's an issue with the fuel system. We don't think it's anything terminal, but it is going to take some time to investigate and repair, I'm afraid. To be sure we can manage the tyres through a lap, so try to keep the wear down through each corner. Be especially careful accelerating on corner exit. temperature's so important for your tyres. Cool down laps are now vital after a push lap so that we don't light up the rubber too much, not to mention recharging the battery. Well, programme over, but that wasn't much help to us, I'm afraid. We need to run it again. Confirmed, we'll receive you at the end of this lap.
And that's it. Practice is officially over. Until next time. Well, as the sun goes down, the speeds go up. It's almost time to get underway for this shootout for the fastest time and the best possible grid position for tomorrow's race. Let's get on with it. It's qualifying for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Well, that wraps up qualifying, but don't worry, we'll be back tomorrow as we head into the Grand Prix. Come to an end today as we return to racing for the opening event of what promises to be an enthralling season. Welcome along then to round one of this year's Formula One World Championship. We go racing today around the 3.36 miles of the magnificent Bahrain International Circuit, with 15 corners and 2 good passing opportunities into turns 1 and 4. Keep an eye out for drivers locking the front left tyre into the tricky braking zone of turn 10. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Ace lines up on pole position, and Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Oscar Piastri, Fernando Alonso, Leclerc, Norris, Russell, Perez, Sainz, Hamilton, Gasly, Stroll, Ocon, Tsunoda, Albon, Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Ricciardo, Bottas, and Logan Sargent. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? And alongside me in the commentary box, my old friend, Anthony Davidson. Now, Ant, as much as I like testing, and I do love testing, and I've really enjoyed the build-up here and all the speculation, I really want to see some action. And finally today, we get some proper action on the track.
You're going to definitely see action, Crofty. Everyone's G'd up for this one. They've done the testing, like you say. The drivers will be revving inside, heart rates going, trying to burst out their chest at this moment. With that anticipation, who's got the speed? We're going to learn now, once and for all.
Well, mate, pole position is a great way to start the season, but as you know, there's no points for pole. Now we've got to go and take the win. DRS is being enabled this lap. We can use DRS when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone. work. That's a new fastest lap of the race. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 20.0 seconds. They're on fresh softs. They're currently 17th place. And the time last lap, 1:42.1. Okay, be aware, the grip levels are going to start falling away soon. Gap to your teammate behind, 32.3 seconds. Okay, they're on old softs. They're currently 17th place. Your last lap time, 1 minute 42.2. approaching the pit window now, and you're going to be on hards next time. Okay, mate, we've got some clear track around us now, so let's use it and make this next lap a quick one. Let's go. First position, front of the pack, and Verstappen's behind. Okay, they're on old softs. Okay, your pit window opens next lap. 13 laps to go. Yeah, really good job on hitting that target, mate. Nice work. Still a long way to go, though. Push now, we're boxing this lap. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 47.2 seconds. Okay, they're on old softs. They're currently 17th place. Time last lap, 1:42.9. Valtteri is in for his stop. Remember, box this lap. Keep an eye on your distance to the speed limit line as you approach and make sure you don't speed. Pitting this lap then. Come into the pits at the end of this lap. Okay, go, go, go. Perfect job on the turn in there, mate. Looks like a nice stop time. We're happy with that one. Pit strategy complete. See these tyres through to the end now. The car behind you's just come in for the hard tyres. Car behind, running hard tyres. Okay, they're on fresh hards. They're currently 17th place. And the time last lap, 1 minute 43.4. Okay, mate, your lap times are all over the place right now. We've got to have consistency. Come on, we can do better than this. Okay, really, really good. You hit that target nicely. There's a long way to go in this race, so let's keep it clean. Okay, they're on fresh hards. They're in 18th. Your last lap time, 1:43.2. Okay, this is your final lap of the race.
Nice one. Very lovely drive. On to the next one.
Ah, fantastic drive. That's just fantastic. Amazing. You deserved that race win. Well done, mate.
That's a fantastic team effort then to secure victory here in the desert.
Well, all that off-season work clearly paying off here today, Crofty. A brilliant way to start the season with a solid victory. It's a real good confidence boost as well, and you feel like that's going to really propel them forward through to the next race coming up.
Sauber have been winning fans the world over with their brilliant driving and showing that they're a force to be reckoned with out there on the track. They'll certainly be building on that fan base after today's excellent results. And with that, we wrap up another weekend of motorsport action. But with more races lined up, be sure to join us when we come back with more Formula One.